Shalom everyone, Jonathan here, and it is almost Shabbat and time for a weekly update about what's currently going on. I'll be covering quite a few topics this time. This won't be a single issue, but we'll speak about more than one topic. I'll speak about the current humanitarian situation in Gaza, which has been front and center of most international media coverage, of course following the tragic and regrettable incident whereby an Israeli missile strike killed 7 international aid workers from Western countries, and I think that's part of the story, sadly. The investigation of it, statements, the actions taken, and how that will influence future humanitarian operations. I'll speak about how aid is being provided now, and really the amount of aid coming in. I'm not sure that everybody or a lot of people are aware of how much aid is coming in and what really the problems are in distributing it and making sure that they get to the end and intended recipient. And I will speak about Ramadan. We're now on the 4th Friday of Ramadan. Prayers are already wrapping up so far without significant events, what that means and what the future holds. And then we'll speak about Iranian aggression. Lots of tension in Israel the last few days about an imminent Iranian attack. That's how many Israelis are interpreting it. I'll give you my 2 cents on it, and we will end, of course, with speaking about the remaining 134 Israeli hostages. So let's talk about the humanitarian situation. Yes, nobody in Israel, and I wouldn't do that either, is belittling the humanitarian situation in Gaza. As there are 134 Israeli hostages, many of them sadly dead, many of them still alive, held in Gaza, Israel is allowing the provision of humanitarian aid into Gaza. Now let's break down how that aid is entering Gaza. We have the ground corridors. The first one established was from Egypt through Rafah into southern Gaza and then via trucks up until central and northern Gaza. That's one. We have the second added Kerem Shalom crossing, which used to be active before the war. That was the main goods terminal from Israel or from the outer world into Gaza, where hundreds of trucks used to cross every day. That crossing is active today with dozens and sometimes more than 100 trucks crossing from Israel into Gaza every day. Third crossing is an additional one that Israel opened, understanding the situation on the ground and understanding that there's still a lot of Palestinians who need humanitarian support in the northern part of Gaza. So Israel opened up another road in the proximity of the city of Gaza in the northern part, where trucks drive directly from Israel into the northern part of Gaza. Instead of going south to Kerem Shalom and then going up north again, they go straight to the northern part of Gaza and provide much needed food, water, clothes, and medical supplies. So that's 3 ground corridors already. Fourth effort is, of course, via sea, and there's already an active maritime line of supply where goods are delivered to the Gaza port and then distributed on the ground to various locations, either via trucks driving on the coastal road or other entities. And then we have airdrops, right? We have various countries that have been airdropping aid into Gaza. The US, Egypt, the Emirates, a few other Western countries have been doing that. Of course, all of what I'm talking about in close coordination with Israel. And we've seen mixed results with the airdrops. The problem is that in Gaza, the rules that govern are the rules of the jungle. If aid is dropped from the air, then the guy with the most guns, Kalashnikovs or otherwise, will take the aid. 9 times out of 10, the guy with the gun is the Hamas guy in Gaza. So what they do is they steal the aid and then they sell it on the market at exorbitant prices for Palestinians to buy. The prices for basic commodities, including the stuff that's being delivered as humanitarian aid, are skyrocketing in Gaza. So the problem really isn't the amount of aid coming in, it's how it is distributed, who controls distribution, and how many fingers Hamas fingers, UNRWA fingers, other terrorist organizations and corrupt entities that are part of the horrible situation in Gaza, how many of those fingers are involved in what's happening? There's empirical proof of hundreds of truckloads of goods coming in, delivered from Israel to Gaza, and then stuck in either UNRWA facilities or in other holding areas and not delivered the final stage to the people who really need it. As far as I understand, that is the biggest challenge that we currently have. Yes, infrastructure is damaged, mostly in the northern part, but the issue of delivering aid to the end recipient, those people who need it, civilians, women, children, and elderly, that is the problem, and the obstacle really is of course related to the situation in Gaza and the fact that Hamas governs Gaza, and Hamas does not prioritize humanitarian aid. It provides taking aid and giving it to their cronies and fighters and affiliated or connected families. Those are Hamas priorities, and of course at this stage, half a year after this war started, after the atrocious attacks of October the 7th, nobody watching this is surprised of the priorities of Hamas. First it's Hamas, second it's Hamas loyalists, and then I don't know how low down on the list, maybe careful civilians. Those are Hamas priorities. Now let's speak about the sad incident of the killing of 7 aid workers. I am happy and I commend the IDF for quickly, probably quicker than any other Western military has done in recent memory in combat. I commend the IDF for understanding the severity of the situation, taking responsibility on record, and now investigating and taking swift and transparent action. I am sad to see Israeli officers disciplined. Many of them are distinguished officers who this may be the first mistake that they've done, but I do think that it is necessary for Israel to show that we take this incident, this tragic mistake, not an intended attack, but a mistake and misidentification of the aid convoy for terrorists, that we take this mistake seriously, and we are going to do everything we can in order to make sure that it doesn't happen again. Please remember, for those of you who may have friends who are critiquing or you're seeing it in the media, please remember the environment we're talking about. It's an area that is full of armed terrorists, where there's no distinction between civilians and combatants, where Hamas continuously, systematically uses and abuses civilians, civilian infrastructure, protected sites, and everything that is supposed to be off the board. Hamas uses this for military fighting illegally against international humanitarian law. That is the environment that Israel is fighting in. That is what led to this unfortunate mistake. Moving on, I think it is absolutely crucial that the IDF makes sure that aid organizations are safe to operate. And this is the first step. Swiftly investigating, very clearly and transparently communicating the findings, taking action, and sending a clear message into the IDF, and enhancing protocol to make sure that this doesn't happen again. And I hope this is the last time that any aid worker, definitely from a tremendous organization like the WCK, is hurt while doing a noble cause or fighting for a noble cause inside Gaza. Let's speak about Ramadan. Remember how half of the world was up in arms, cautioning Israel that you mustn't fight in Gaza and you mustn't launch the offensive against Hamas in Rafah during Ramadan because of the sensitivity. So far, 4 prayers have gone by on the top of the Temple Mount at Al-Aqsa and Dome of the Rock Mount. All of them have gone rather uneventful. And despite the fact that there have been numerous attempts by different terrorist organizations to launch attacks, including with suicide bombers, including with IEDs, these have been thwarted and of course shared with the public by Israeli security forces, by the police, by the ISA and by the IDF. And so far things are going relatively well. Freedom of worship is protected it is sanctified by Israel, allowing Muslims to exercise their freedom of worship and doing it respectfully with significant freedoms. That is happening. And on the same time, Israel has been deployed in significant numbers in Judea and Samaria, in Jerusalem, in anticipation of attacks with great force in order to minimize the chance of that happening. And so far, we're not quite out of the woods yet. That appears to be working, and I hope, and I say that with caution, of course, I hope that this strategy and these tactics will continue to hold, and that we will see an entire Ramadan without significant terrorist attacks perpetrated by extremist Islamists against Israeli or Jewish targets. Fourth topic, Iran. Since Iranian terrorists belonging to the Quds Force, the revolutionary Quds Force, were targeted and killed successfully in Damascus, in an Iranian facility. Since then, there's been lots of talk and lots of media hype in Israel about Iranian intentions to strike against Israel. I am the last one that will underestimate the capabilities or the resolve of any of our enemies, be it any of the Iranian proxies around Israel or any other enemy that we may have further away, or Iran itself. I think that's the bad thing, to underestimate your enemy. But I do not want to overestimate intentions, capabilities, or resolve of any of our enemies. And Iran and its proxies has been firing at Israel, killing Israelis for the last half year. And frankly, I don't understand what all the talk is about in Israel and why there's such a big concern about an Iranian retaliation against Israel. Israel is the one retaliating against Iranian violence and attacks from the north, Hezbollah and Hamas; from the south, Islamic Jihad and Hamas; from the northeast, Iranian proxies in Syria; and from the southeast, another Iranian proxy, the Houthis, who have been firing ballistic missiles at Israel for almost half a year. So if anybody is retaliating, it's us finally retaliating against Iranian aggression, and for the first time in a very good signal, which I hope is a forebearer of good news, for the first time actually holding the Iranians responsible for their actions of aggression against Israel. And I hope it's not the last one. And for me, this is clear. As long as Israel continues with the previous strategy of not holding Iranians, not their proxies, but Iranians responsible and personally accountable, including Iranian facilities, infrastructure, and military capabilities, as long as those are not targeted and affected by Israel, why should we anticipate our enemy to be acting any differently? The Iranian strategy of using proxies against Israel and using proxies against the US is working, is giving great dividends to the Islamic State of Iran. And since we are the recipients of this violence and terrorism and instability, I think that we should reevaluate our strategy. And therefore, I am very pleased with the killing of these Iranian terrorists who were welcome in Syria. And if Iran will do the mistake of firing at Israel from Iranian sovereign land, then that's a tremendous thing. Israel will even have more justification to strike back from wherever it was fired at from. So if Iran does that, then I think there's a good chance of seeing positive developments in the region in the long term. I don't want war, and I think that Israelis have gone through quite an ordeal since October the 7th, but I think that it is high time to reevaluate our strategy and what we do with the head of the octopus, or the source of violence and instability and terror in the region, which is the Islamic Republic of Iran. Last thing about the hostages. More than 180 days have passed, and still Israelis are enduring hell under and above earth in Gaza at the hands of Hamas and other Palestinian terrorists. Sadly, I see that Hamas do not look as if they are really intending to releasing any of the hostages, and so far they have only used the hostages and the suffering of the Israeli families as a way to buy more time and to apply pressure on Israel. Sadly, they're getting help from quite a lot of other institutions, countries, politicians, elected officials, and others around the world in focusing pressure on Israel instead of having the pressure on Hamas, their Qatari supporters, their Iranian funders. A lot of the pressure is focused at Israel, and I think that is very regrettable. I would like to see swift advancements made, and of course for our hostages to be brought back home safely. That's it for this update. If you find it useful, share it with friends or on social media. I would appreciate if you do that. And I wish all of you watching, wherever you are, from Israel, a Shabbat Shalom and all the best. Thank you.